On October 4, 1943, inside the oak-paneled conference room of the Reich Air Ministry in Berlin, an eerie silence enveloped as Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring addressed German aircraft manufacturers. His remarks were meticulously recorded by stenographers and would later be recognized as a significant strategic blunder. "The Americans lack the ability to construct airplanes," he declared confidently, adding that they excelled instead at manufacturing refrigerators and razor blades. Beyond the tall windows of the Air Ministry, smoke billowed from Berlin's factories, struggling to replenish losses sustained by the Luftwaffe. Despite mounting setbacks in Stalingrad and North Africa, Germany still dominated much of Europe. However, Göring's perception was rooted in outdated views from the 1920s, seeing the United States as a nation filled with jazz musicians and merchants incapable of producing war material. Unbeknownst to Göring, at that precise moment, American shipyards were launching 3 Liberty ships daily. By the conclusion of his meeting, another vessel had already been completed at the Richmond shipyard alone. Within 6 months, those same Americans who supposedly lacked the capacity for aircraft production would be conducting 1,000-bomber raids over Germany and launching a new cargo ship every 8 hours. The inevitability of German defeat was being etched not in battle plans, but in the stark reality of production figures that soon exposed the fundamental flaw in Nazi strategy. Göring's underestimation of American industrial prowess had origins dating back to World War I, where he witnessed America's late and limited entry into the conflict. With virtually no air force at the start, the United States was compelled to use French and British aircraft. This experience profoundly influenced his assumptions about American capabilities. His dismissive statement regarding airplanes became his go-to response when questioned about potential threats from the U.S., a stance he reiterated throughout the early war years. In 1940, following France's capitulation, Göring assured Hitler, "The Americans excel in producing fancy cars and refrigerators but are not adept at building aircraft. It's all bluff. They're masters of bluff." This was not just Göring's individual misperception. It stemmed from systemic underestimation by German intelligence of American industrial capabilities. In November 1941, Oberst Joseph Beppo Schmid, the chief of Luftwaffe intelligence, submitted a report asserting that the United States could produce no more than 400 aircraft per month. His analysis highlighted the absence of precise machinery and skilled labor essential for military manufacturing in American factories. German naval intelligence shared similar dismissive views. On January 1942, Captain Zur C. Heinz Usman reported to Admiral Raeder that U.S. shipbuilding capacity was limited to around 1 cargo vessel per week at each yard. In his report, he noted, "These workers are soft and accustomed to high wages and short hours. They lack the discipline of German craftsmen." Even Hitler, though publicly scornful, privately acknowledged the potential threat. He informed his generals in December 1941 that defeating Russia quickly was imperative, so they could address the United States before its production capacity became overwhelming. Yet Göring, tasked with evaluating enemy air power, persisted in believing in American industrial inadequacies. As Göring continued to express his dismissive stance, America was rapidly transforming into what Franklin Roosevelt dubbed the arsenal of democracy. On January 6, 1942, during his State of the Union address, Roosevelt announced ambitious production goals. For 1942, to produce 60,000 planes, and by 1943, to increase this number to 125,000 planes, with 100,000 being combat aircraft. German intelligence intercepted these figures. On January 8, 1942, Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, recorded in his diary that he found Roosevelt's production targets laughable and purely propagandistic. It would be miraculous if they managed to achieve even 1/10 of these figures. The Germans were unaware that America had been preparing since 1940. This groundwork wasn't established through military orders, but rather through British gold. Desperate for ships to replace those lost to U-boats, the British Purchasing Commission approached American industrialist Henry J. Kaiser with an ambitious proposal: construct 60 cargo ships using mass production techniques never before employed in shipbuilding. Despite having no experience building ships, Kaiser accepted the challenge after successfully completing the Hoover Dam ahead of schedule. His innovative approach would not only transform shipbuilding, but also redefine wartime production methods entirely. Rather than relying on skilled shipwrights to build each vessel individually, Kaiser adopted prefabrication techniques, used welding instead of riveting, and integrated assembly line procedures from automobile manufacturing. The Liberty ship design was intentionally kept simple: a 441-foot cargo vessel based on an outdated British blueprint, equipped with a triple-expansion steam engine that any mechanic could maintain. When German intelligence obtained technical specifications from a torpedoed Liberty ship early in 1942, they dismissed it as rudimentary technology. Captain Peter Kramer wrote, "These ships are coffins, slow, cumbersome, and lacking the sailing characteristics of even a brick." What Kramer failed to comprehend was that the simplicity of the Liberty ship was its brilliance. Every component was standardized, and each section was prefabricated in factories across America before being shipped to 18 shipyards for assembly like enormous three-dimensional puzzles. The learning curve was steep, but workers with no prior experience were outproducing seasoned German shipwrights within months. The first Liberty ship, the SS Patrick Henry, was launched on September 27, 1941, after a construction period of 244 days. German naval intelligence observed this development with satisfaction, estimating that the Americans could construct around 50 ships annually. However, they failed to recognize the rapid acceleration in production rates. The second ship required 180 days for completion, while the 10th took just 105 days. By January 1942, construction times had plummeted to 70 days. Then came Henry Kaiser's announcement, which German intelligence dismissed as mere propaganda. He claimed to build a ship in 10 days. In September 1942, at Oregon Shipbuilding Corporation in Portland, as German U-boats were experiencing their second, happy time by sinking over 609,000 tons of Allied shipping that month, workers laid the keel for the SS Joseph N. Teal at exactly 12:01 a.m. on September 13th. What ensued was a meticulously coordinated industrial spectacle involving 3 shifts working round the clock. Gigantic cranes hoisted prefabricated sections weighing up to 250 tons into place, while welders, many of whom were women who had never wielded torches 6 months prior, produced flawless seams. The workforce comprised housewives, farmers, and store clerks transformed into shipbuilders within weeks. Among them was Wendy the welder, whose real name was Janet Doyle, a former waitress who emerged as one of the fastest welders in the yard. Her colleague Tom Washington, an African-American sharecropper from Alabama, had become a master shipfitter, while Miguel Santos, a Mexican-American, surpassed German welding standards with his speed. On September 23 at 4:30 p.m., the SS Joseph, and 10 days after Teal's keel was laid, she slid into the Columbia River. Meanwhile, in Berlin, German intelligence dismissed reports of her construction as mere propaganda. Admiral Karl Dönitz informed his staff that such claims, even if accurate, were likely exaggerated stunts and unfeasible for sustained production. However, Kaiser countered by announcing they could achieve this feat more rapidly. On November 8, 1942, at 12:01 a.m., in Richmond Shipyard No. 2, California, the keel of the SS Robert E. Peary was laid amidst hundreds of prefabricated sections, arranged with meticulous precision around the shipway. This project shattered any remaining German confidence and represented an extraordinary accomplishment by American workers. Every component had been prefabricated, tested, and fitted in workshops across the yard before assembly began on the main hull. The entire vessel was essentially constructed before it was physically assembled, a massive speed-building demonstration. Kaiser had selected his most skilled laborers for this ambitious undertaking. Among them were Catherine Glasscock, a former schoolteacher who became one of the fastest welders at 35 feet per hour, an impressive rate rarely matched by German counterparts, and Richmond Jones, an African-American ex-sharecropper operating the primary crane with such precision that he could position sections weighing up to 250 tons within inches of their designated spots. Additionally, Mary P. Losino, a 19-year-old Italian-American, managed the electrical installation team responsible for wiring 5 miles of cable in less than 20 hours. With each passing hour, the ship took shape at an incredible pace. The bottom hull plates were welded into place within just 6 hours. Within 18 hours, the side shells were in place. By day one's close, observers could clearly see a ship taking shape. On the second day, a prefabricated deckhouse, complete with plumbing and wiring, was installed. This single lift operation would have taken German yards an entire week to accomplish. The engine, a 25 horsepower triple expansion steam unit weighing 140 tons, was lowered into position on day 3. It had been pre-assembled at Lido, tested, partially dismantled for transport, and arrived with engineers who could install it in hours rather than weeks. On November 12th at 3:30 p.m., the SS Robert E. Peary was launched. This marked a record-breaking achievement of 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes since laying her keel. With a displacement of 14,245 tons, she only needed minimal finishing before entering service. What seemed impossible had become routine. The first credible reports reached Berlin in December 1942. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flights using long-range Focke-Wulf WWII Condors returned with photographs that German intelligence initially doubted. These images revealed numerous Liberty ships under construction at various shipyards. Hauptmann Wilhelm Domes identified over 200 vessels under construction in aerial photos, and his December 15th report stated, "If these observations are correct, American shipbuilding capacity exceeds our estimates by a factor of 10. However, Göring dismissed the findings. He insisted to his staff that the photographs were misleading, suggesting the Americans were showing different angles of the same ships to create an illusion of mass production. In January 1943, Captain Lieutenant Klaus Bargston of UMNS 521 observed alarming developments. Convoy HX-122 comprised 47 merchant ships that appeared to be newly built, indicating a significant surge in production capacity. These standard types were clearly mass-produced, raising questions about their origin. The truth was that shipyards across the United States were rapidly producing Liberty ships. For instance, the Bethlehem Fairfield shipyard in Baltimore employed 47,000 workers and launched 1 vessel every 4 days. Similarly, California Shipbuilding Corporation completed a new ship every 5 days. Even those unfamiliar with maritime construction managed to build ships at an unprecedented pace compared to skilled German craftsmen. By March 1943, American shipyards were constructing Liberty ships at such a rate that it bewildered the Germans. 3 vessels were being launched daily. According to Admiral Denyett's calculations, U-boats needed to sink 1.3 million tons of shipping each month just to maintain parity. However, their best performance in November 1942 involved sinking only 729,000 tons. The tide had already turned against them. Each Liberty ship required 250,000 individual parts, with the hull alone consisting of 30,000 precisely cut pieces of steel. Additionally, these ships featured a complex electrical system that used 25 miles of wiring and contained 35,000 feet of piping and 25,000 valves, with over 350 miles of welding involved in their construction. Despite this complexity, American workers managed to assemble these intricate machines within an average of 42 days by mid-1943. The workforce challenged Nazi racial theories in profound ways. Out of 650,000 workers constructing ships, 200,000 were women, known as Rossi the Riveters, demonstrating that gender had no bearing on industrial prowess. African Americans, whom Nazi doctrine deemed inferior, were operating cranes and welding with precision surpassing German standards. At Kaiser's Richmond yards, integrated teams produced a ship every 51 hours by May 1943, something prohibited under Nazi racial laws. The diversity within these workforces was remarkable, featuring Chinese-American welders alongside Norwegian immigrants, Native American riveters from New Mexico working with Jewish refugees from Germany, and African-American women overseeing crews that included impoverished whites from Appalachia. This amalgamation of supposedly inferior groups was outpacing the German master race in ship production by an amount that defied calculation. In May 1943, at Wolf's Lair in East Prussia, Admiral Dönitz delivered grim news to Hitler. During what became known as Black May, the U-boats had lost 41 submarines while sinking just 50 merchant ships. American shipyards were constructing vessels 3 times faster than the U-boats could destroy them. Mein Führer informed Hitler that the Americans launched 140 merchant vessels in a single month, compared to the 41 sunk by the Germans. At this rate, they would replace every ship lost since 1939 by year's end. Göring tried to deflect blame when Hitler turned to him, his corpulent frame seeming to shrink under the dictator's menacing gaze. "You assured me that Americans could only build consumer goods," Hitler said quietly, his voice harboring the danger preceding his violent outbursts. Göring attempted a defense. "The ships are of inferior quality," he claimed. "In stormy conditions, they will disintegrate. Our intelligence reports have indicated this." Hitler interjected, saying, "Your intelligence is worthless. The Americans are outpacing us in every production category." These figures were irrefutable. American factories churned out 8,000 aircraft monthly, while German output, despite Albert Speer's efforts, peaked at just 2,000. In tank manufacturing, the United States surpassed Germany by producing over 2,000 tanks per month compared to Germany's 500. The construction of Liberty ships exemplified America's industrial dominance, which Germany could not compete with. On October 4, 1943, Göring delivered a speech that opened this script, persistently denying the mounting evidence. He addressed aircraft manufacturers and dismissed American production claims as impossible, even if true, insisting on inferior quality. Quantity without quality was meaningless, he argued. Yet, as he spoke, Göring knew the truth. Luftwaffe pilots reported that American P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts outperformed German fighters. B-17s and B-24s dominated the skies over Germany in massive formations. These supposedly inferior aircraft were methodically decimating German cities. General Adolf Galland approached Reichsmarschall Göring after his speech and confronted him with captured American production data. The figures showed that they were producing 504-engine bombers at a weekly rate, surpassing our total number of fighters. "Your underestimation of their capabilities has sealed the fate of the Reich," he declared. Retreating to his Karen Hall hunting estate, Göring found solace among the art treasures plundered from European museums. The most credible witnesses to America's industrial prowess were the U-boat crews who faced it firsthand. Captain Lieutenant Heinz Scheffer of UMNS 977 wrote that by late 1943, convoys consisted of up to 100 ships, mostly new American constructions. Even in the best-case scenario, sinking just one or two was barely noticeable, akin to trying to empty an ocean with a teaspoon. For every ship destroyed, 3 more appeared on the horizon. Oberleutnant Herbert Werner, commander of UMNS 415, offered perhaps the most poignant testimony. Through their periscopes, they could see freshly painted Liberty ships, mass-produced hulls bearing welded seams and standardized deck equipment, identical in profile. Each convoy grew larger than the last. They realized that they were battling not just individual vessels, but an entire industrial machine capable of replenishing losses faster than we could inflict them. This recognition had a profound psychological impact. American broadcasts proudly announced ship launches as if reporting sports scores, while German U-boat crews stopped counting their victories because the sheer volume of replacements drove them to despair. By January 1944, American production statistics were being broadcast as a form of psychological warfare, leaving German intelligence helplessly listening to announcements they could not refute. In 1943, 1,238 Liberty ships were completed along with 203 Victory ships, an improved version, 122 tankers, and 367 military vessels. The peak monthly production was reached in December 1943, when 155 merchant ships were launched. Additionally, 87-89 aircraft were delivered, 24-64 tanks completed, and 153,000 military trucks manufactured that year. In February 1944, Wilhelm Sangen, head of the Reich Association of German Industry, reported these figures to Hitler. According to Sangen's report, American annual production was projected at 100,000 aircraft compared to Germany's 25,000. 50,000 tanks versus Germany's 19,000. 2.5 million military vehicles against Germany's mere 100,000. And 25-0 merchant ships in contrast with Germany's 200. These ratios were unsustainable even for a single year. Hitler reportedly threw the report into the fireplace while shouting it was defeatist propaganda, but the numbers provided were actually conservative estimates. Actual American production in 1944 would surpass these projections. Independent verification came from Japan's naval attaché in Berlin, Commander Toshikazu Omi, who sent a coded message to Tokyo in March 1944. He noted that German leadership was consistently underestimating American industrial capacity and had confirmed through independent investigation that the United States launched 173 ships alone in February. Despite this evidence, German officials remained in denial, which posed serious risks for strategic planning. Omi recommended that the Imperial Navy assume American production capabilities were double what the Germans estimated. The Japanese forces facing the Americans in the Pacific had no illusions about their opponent's strength. Admiral Yamamoto had warned before Pearl Harbor, "I can run wild for 6 months. After that, I have no expectation of success." He recognized what Göring failed to grasp. Once mobilized, American industrial capacity was virtually limitless from an adversary's viewpoint. On June 6, 1944, D-Day marked the ultimate showcase of American industrial might. The German defenders witnessed an armada that defied belief. Over 69-39 vessels were deployed, including numerous Liberty ships loaded with supplies, vehicles, and ammunition. General Lieutenant Wilhelm Richter, commander of the 716th Infantry Division, described the scene as a sea blackened with ships stretching to the horizon in every direction. He concluded it was not an invasion, but rather a migration. Each Liberty ship in that immense armada symbolized 42 days of American industrial output. Each tank rolling onto the beach was one among 88,410 that would be manufactured during World War II. Every Jeep was part of the total 639,245 vehicles assembled by U.S. factories. The landing craft used in such great numbers were constructed in locations like Evansville, Indiana, and Quincy, Illinois, by workers unfamiliar with oceanic settings. Oberst Ernst Goth, defending Sword Beach, later recounted that Germans had been told American soldiers would crack under pressure, and their equipment was inferior. However, he witnessed American engineers construct a floating harbor within 5 days, larger than most German ports. Their trucks easily navigated beach obstacles as if they were mountains. Allegedly substandard fighter planes dominated the skies against the Luftwaffe. In February 1945, when U.S. bombs started falling on Berlin, Göring clung to his illusions. He informed his staff that American production statistics were exaggerated and suggested many ships might be wooden decoys for propaganda purposes. His deputy, General de Fleger Karl Kohler, documented the Reichsmarschall's fantasy. Yesterday, 1,000 American bombers devastated Lüneburg, yet he still insists they couldn't have built so many aircraft. When shown crashed bomber serial numbers confirming at least 15,000 B-17 and B-24s had been produced, Göring accused him of being defeatist. The reality was even more daunting. By war's end, America had manufactured 31,000 four-engine bombers, 18,482 B-24 Liberators, and 12,731 B-17 Flying Fortresses, a number that surpassed Germany's total aircraft production throughout the conflict. In May 1945, when American forces seized control of the Reich Air Ministry, they discovered intelligence files belonging to Göring. Each report warning about America's industrial capabilities had been dismissed as unreliable or enemy propaganda in Göring's own handwriting. A June 1943 document noted that a shipyard visible from neutral waters in Panama was constructing 17 Liberty ships simultaneously, with an estimated completion rate of every 3 days. Göring had scribbled impossible, agent compromised, or insane next to it. Another report from December 1943 declared the construction of the 1,000th Liberty ship, to which Göring responded with propaganda and suggested that the actual number was likely far lower, possibly less than 200. Major William Hutchinson later reviewed these documents and remarked on how utterly self-deceived the German leadership had been. They possessed accurate intelligence, but rejected it due to its conflict with their racial ideologies and pre-war expectations. During the Nuremberg trials in 1946, Göring was confronted with production statistics: 2710 Liberty ships, 531 Victory ships, 296,429 aircraft, 88,446 tanks, and 2,383,311 military trucks. He countered by stating that these figures represented quantity rather than quality, asserting that Germans prioritized quality over sheer numbers. Prosecutor Robert Jackson then presented a German report from 1944, authored by Göring's staff, acknowledging that American aircraft outperformed their counterparts in every aspect: speed, range, armament, and reliability. At this point, Göring fell silent. In discussions with psychiatrist Dr. Gustav Gilbert, Göring eventually admitted to having underestimated the Americans. He confessed, "I thought they were soft and spoiled by luxury when I said they could only produce consumer goods. This was my gravest miscalculation. They overwhelmed us with an avalanche of production." The Germans underestimated American manufacturing capabilities, leading to fatal outcomes. Despite it being mathematically impossible to achieve victory, Admiral Dönitz persisted in the U-boat campaign. Out of the 40,000 men who served on U-boats, 28,000 perished, resulting in a staggering 70% casualty rate, the highest for any service in any country during the war. These brave individuals lost their lives while battling an enemy whose ships were being replaced faster than they could be sunk. The Luftwaffe continued offensive operations based on Göring's assurances about limited American aircraft production long after such tactics should have been abandoned. The result was catastrophic. 433,000 Luftwaffe personnel perished attempting to combat an adversary producing 50 planes for every German aircraft built. The U-boat narrative speaks volumes. Germany constructed 1,162 submarines throughout the conflict, sinking nearly 3,000 Allied ships, including 175 warships and 25 merchant vessels. However, the Allies produced an astounding 77 merchant ships, meaning for every vessel sunk by U-boats, 2 were built. Numbers do not lie, even when high-ranking officials like Reichsmarshals make misleading claims. Behind this surge in American shipbuilding stood 18 million workers engaged in war production, a number greater than the total strength of Germany's armed forces. The Richmond shipyards alone employed up to 93,000 workers at their peak, exceeding the entire German shipbuilding industry. These workers hailed from diverse backgrounds, debunking Nazi theories about racial and social hierarchies. Emma Martinez, a Mexican-American welder at Todd Houston Shipbuilding, managed to complete an impressive 300 feet of flawless welding per shift, an achievement rarely matched by her German counterparts. Dorothy Luck, a homemaker from Oakland, transformed into a crane operator capable of handling lifts weighing up to 250 tons. Thomas Washington, an African-American sharecropper hailing from Alabama, transformed into a highly skilled shipfitter whose work surpassed even the stringent standards set by Germany. Despite operating in segregated facilities and adhering to local laws that enforced racial separation, they enjoyed amenities such as child care centers for working mothers and medical clinics providing free health care. Workers were paid $1.20 per hour, which was more than what German skilled workers earned daily. They used their surplus income to purchase war bonds, whereas their counterparts in Germany faced execution if caught slowing down production. The differences were stark. In America, employees willingly worked overtime for additional pay and a sense of pride, while German factories increasingly relied on slave labor from conquered territories, where these workers frequently sabotaged production when possible. In the United States, children attended school as parents went to work. But in Germany, teenagers were drafted into anti-aircraft units instead of being allowed to continue their education. American workers contributed suggestions that improved productivity and efficiency, whereas German employees who pointed out issues risked execution for alleged defeatism. The construction of Liberty ships exemplified American ingenuity and innovation, a feat unmatched by the Germans. Welding replaced riveting, cutting down construction time by 30% and reducing weight by 600 tons. The welding technique, developed by Lincoln Electric Company, was so advanced that captured German engineers declared it impossible without witnessing demonstrations firsthand. Prefabrication reached unprecedented levels in American shipyards. Entire deckhouses were constructed miles away from the main facility and transported to assembly sites using specially designed rail cars capable of handling 250 tons, 5 times the capacity of Germany's largest cranes. Henry Kaiser introduced groundbreaking assembly line techniques, where workers specialized in specific tasks. This system allowed a welder, for instance, to focus on one type of joint for months, achieving levels of speed and perfection unattainable with traditional methods. The steep learning curve meant that workers who had never seen a ship in July were outproducing veteran German shipwrights by December. Each Liberty ship required materials sourced from across the country, delivered with precision logistics that even German officers admitted was impossible to achieve. Pittsburgh's steel plate shipment arrived precisely on schedule. Engines from Toledo were delivered fully assembled and tested. Electrical generators from Schenectady showed up exactly when expected. The railway network that supported this operation handled massive volumes of cargo. In 1943 alone, the Pennsylvania Railroad transported a staggering 50 million tons of war materials, surpassing Germany's total rail capacity, even with the use of forced labor. American railways managed to do so while also maintaining civilian passenger service. Major Hans Kehl, a German logistics officer who analyzed American production after the war, noted that we struggled to supply individual factories, whereas America supplied entire industries. We counted boxcars, they counted train loads. Our planning spanned weeks, theirs encompassed years. As Liberty ships were being churned out in large numbers, Americans continued refining their designs. Victory ships introduced in 1944 were faster, reaching speeds of 15 to 17 knots compared to the Liberty ship's 11 knots, and larger and more advanced, yet they were built just as quickly, averaging around 42 days for construction. The Victory ship program highlighted America's capability to innovate while sustaining mass production. New turbine engines replaced older systems. Improved hull designs enhanced speed and capacity. Better ventilation preserved cargo, and upgraded navigation equipment increased safety. All these advancements were implemented without disrupting production schedules. In contrast, German efforts to improve submarines with the Type 21 program led to chaos. Only 4 Type 21 U-boats became operational before the end of the war, while America constructed 531 Victory ships within just 18 months. The economic disparity rendered Göring's dismissal a delusional move from the start. In 1941, American GDP stood at $126 billion, compared to Germany's $35 billion. American steel output reached 80 million tons, while Germany managed only 20 million tons. The United States generated 26 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity compared to Germany's 8 billion. During the war, American production surged by 170%, whereas German efforts under Speer's direction resulted in an increase of just 30%. In 1944, America allocated $90 billion annually for military expenses, surpassing Germany's entire pre-war gross domestic product. The cost of a single Liberty ship exceeded the total expenditure on Germany's U-boat fleet by nearly $4.6 billion. Dr. Rolf Wagenführer, who headed German wartime statistics after the conflict concluded, calculated these stark contrasts. American production overwhelmed that of Germany by factors of 6 in raw materials, 8 in finished goods, and 12 in transportation capacity. We were not defeated. We were outproduced. The sheer volume of American manufacturing became a formidable weapon on its own. The Office of War Information disseminated this data to the German populace through broadcasts, informing soldiers about rapid production rates such as a ship every 8 hours, an aircraft every 5 minutes, and a tank every 7 minutes. Initially skeptical, German troops like Gefreiter Helmut Romer witnessed these claims firsthand during the Normandy defense when they saw thousands of planes darken the sky above them on invasion day. His realization was clear. The Americans boasted of sending 10,000 aircraft for D-Day. We ridiculed it as mere propaganda. But then reality dawned upon us. Their leaders were telling the truth all along. Each Liberty ship embodied American resilience and strength. German propaganda attempted to dismiss them as unattractive vessels, but U-boat crews understood their true significance. According to accounts from captured submariners, when convoys of 50 to 70 Liberty ships appeared, it was clear the tide had turned against Germany. Mathematics does not deceive, even if political rhetoric might. Following Germany's surrender, American investigators interviewed German industrial leaders about their wartime assessments. Their responses consistently criticized Göring's judgment. Fritz Thyssen, a steel magnate who aided Hitler's rise to power, remarked that Göring lived in a dream world. He visited America in the 1920s, but only saw speakeasies and jazz clubs, neglecting the country's industrial might. His ignorance proved fatal for Germany. Albert Speer was even more critical. Göring's disregard for American production capacity amounted to criminal negligence. By the time Speer became armament minister, it was already too late. The Americans could produce in a single month what took us an entire year. Liberty ships merely reflected this industrial supremacy that we were unable to match. Even Alfred Krupp, whose factories had been celebrated as the pinnacle of German industry, admitted, "We produced superior steel in small quantities, while the Americans manufactured it on a vast scale." One Liberty ship contained enough steel for 50 Tiger tanks. The United States built 2710 Liberty ships, whereas Germany managed to construct only 1,347 Tiger tanks. The mathematical facts are undeniable. Even the Soviet Union, despite being an ally and ideological adversary of America, was astonished by the United States' industrial capacity. Liberty ships became crucial not only for Britain, but also for sustaining the Soviet war effort. Marshal Georgy Zhukov documented in his memoirs that the Americans provided 400,000 trucks, 13,000 tanks, 15,000 aircraft, and 17 million tons of supplies to them. What truly amazed him were the Liberty ships navigating through Arctic waters while enduring relentless German attacks. Each ship that arrived at Murmansk was a testament to American industrial might overcoming the challenges posed by German submarines. Without these vessels, we would not have been able to advance towards Berlin. Nikita Khrushchev, who oversaw Ukrainian production during the conflict, expressed it succinctly. "Without American trucks, our artillery could not move. Without American steel, we couldn't manufacture tanks. And without American food, our army would starve." The Liberty ships delivered everything from boots to telephone wire to canned meat. Hitler's underestimation of American industry was inadvertently beneficial for us, as it meant that Germany undervalued the power supplying both fronts against them. Admiral Nikolai Kuznetsov provided additional context. While the Soviet Union lost many vessels to German U-boats in Arctic convoys, America built 3 ships for every one sunk by the Germans. The Germans could destroy ships, but Americans could construct vast fleets of them. These figures speak volumes. The final reckoning exposes Göring's grave oversight. Liberty ships were constructed at a rate of 2710 units. The project involved 18 shipyards and an average construction time of 42 days by 1943. The fastest record was set in just 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes, with a total tonnage of 29,292,000 tons. On average, each ship cost $1.8 million, resulting in a cumulative merchant fleet of 5777 vessels across all types, totaling over 56 million deadweight tons, more than the combined efforts of other nations. The workforce peaked at 1.7 million people, including 600,000 women, 35%, and 250,000 African Americans, 14%. Average wages stood at $1.20 per hour. In terms of production comparisons between the United States and Germany, aircraft, 296,429 versus 111,767. Tanks, 88,410 versus 67,429. Trucks, 2,383,311 versus 350,000. Artillery, 257,390 versus 159,147. Machine guns, 2,679,840 versus 1,100,000. And ammunition, 41 billion rounds versus 8 billion rounds. In the U-boat war, Germany constructed 1,162 submarines, losing 785 in combat. Meanwhile, Allied ships sank by German U-boats numbered nearly 3,000, while the Allies managed to build 57 vessels, leading to a net gain of approximately 3,000 ships. The construction of Liberty ships had far-reaching impacts beyond just warfare. They also reshaped society fundamentally. Despite being constrained by local regulations, shipyard integration set an example that would later influence civil rights progress after the war. Women demonstrated their industrial capabilities on a permanent basis, altering the American labor force irreversibly. Kaiser's healthcare initiative for workers evolved into Kaiser Permanent, which now serves 12 million Americans today. Techniques developed in the Liberty Ship program revolutionized global shipbuilding practices. Welding replaced riveting globally, and prefabrication became standard practice. The assembly line concept influenced post-war Japanese and Korean shipbuilders, who would eventually outpace American production using methods originally invented by Americans. Most significantly, Liberty ships demonstrated that democratic nations could mobilize more effectively than totalitarian regimes. They showed that free workers were more productive than slave labor, and that diversity was a source of strength rather than weakness. These ships validated Roosevelt's vision of America as the arsenal of democracy. At Nuremberg, awaiting execution, Göring maintained his aristocratic demeanor but could no longer deny reality. In his final statement to the court, he avoided mentioning American production entirely. This silence itself was an admission. On October 15, 1946, 2 hours before his scheduled execution, Göring took his own life with a cyanide capsule. He died having finally recognized his delusions. Dr. Gustav Gilbert, the prison psychiatrist, documented Göring's final confession about American industry. "I should have known. A nation capable of building the Empire State Building in 410 days could achieve anything, but I believed our propaganda about American decadence." The Liberty ships might as well have been called victory ships from the outset. They exposed our defeat clearly. Today, 2 Liberty ships continue to navigate the seas, the SS John W. Brown and the SS Jeremiah O'Brien. These vessels serve as the final operational reminders of history's most significant industrial accomplishment. As they pass by the Statue of Liberty during memorial cruises, their whistles resonate across waters where once naval battles raged, evoking memories of a time when democracy faced threats from those who doubted its strength. Commander Edward Ellsberg, who oversaw salvage operations in Normandy, aptly summed up what these ships symbolized. They were unattractive, sluggish, and basic, yet they existed in the thousands, transporting everything from Sherman tanks to candy bars, from ammunition to blood plasma. They acted as a vital link between American factories and the battlefronts. Göring's belief that Americans could only produce consumer goods was misguided. The truth was revealed when American workers demonstrated their ability to manufacture virtually anything, including the means to secure victory. With 2710 Liberty ships built during World War II, they stand as a testament to the dangers of underestimating democracy based on prejudiced assumptions. Göring's misjudgment of American industrial capabilities remains one of history's most significant strategic errors. While he was clinging to notions about America's perceived weaknesses, American labor forces were proving that within the arsenal of democracy, imagination set no limits and enemy overconfidence posed the greatest risk. The Liberty ships went beyond being mere cargo carriers. They were 10,000-ton demonstrations of how properly mobilized freedom could outpace tyranny in terms of production. These vessels showed that wars could be won just as much in factories as on battlefields, and those who underestimate industrial might, due to racial bias, do so at their own peril.